Something shifted after September 30th. You can feel it. The air is different. The Spirit is speaking louder. Heaven has moved its hand. And the question is not what is happening in the world, but what is awakening in you. Because when God changes the season, He first changes the soul. For too long, many have held on to things God was trying to release. You have clung to relationships, positions, and emotions that no longer belong to the version of you that God is raising. When heaven calls for change, attachment becomes your enemy. You cannot enter the new with hands full of the old. God is Sabar. Ying. After September 30th, I will separate what is temporary from what is eternal. There are doors that will close without your permission, and people who will fade without explanation. But do not mourn what leaves, because detachment is not loss. It is divine surgery. The Father removes only what blocks your growth. You see, emotional detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is the state of knowing that whether people stay or go, whether things work or fail, whether days shine or storm, the purpose of God remains unshaken. When your heart no longer panics at what changes, that is when, Yober, you have learned the language of faith. Do not fear the silence after separation. In the silence, God is planting strength. Every tear that fell was watering your next season. You may not see it now, but detachment is heaven's way of upgrading your spirit. You cannot rise if you are still chained to WBR hat comforted you yesterday. Some of you are standing in the middle of what feels like divine emptiness. The things that once gave you joy seem hollow. The people you counted on are distant. The path you walked confidently now feels uncertain. But listen, the absence you feel is not punishment. It is preparation. God is pulling your attention away from distractions so He can reveal Himself in fullness. When you stop chasing what left, you begin to attract what is meant. The detachment God requires is not emotional weakness. It is spiritual strength. It is the courage to say, Father, not my will, but yours. It is the peace of surrender that carries authority over storms. Everything after September 30 carries a different vibration. Heaven has released an acceleration of change. The shaking you see around you is not destruction. It is alignment. God is aligning His people with their true purpose, their true assignments, their true voice. And only the detached heart can hear the instructions clearly. If your heart is restless, let it rest in Him. Stop questioning why things had to end and start asking what is being born through this ending. Every divine shift comes with divine reason. When God detaches you from what you love, He is saving you from what would limit your destiny. So lift your head, wipe your tears. The season of emotional dependency is over. This is the hour of spiritual maturity. Those who walk with God must walk lightly unburdened, unattached, unafraid, for only free. Hearts can carry divine fire. Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the desire to control outcomes. Let go of what drains your peace. Detachment is not rejection. It is redirection. You are not losing control. You are giving it back to the one who never loses. God said, after September 30, everything changes, and truly everything has. But not in the way the world sees. The change begins within. You are stepping into a realm where peace governs, not panic. Where faith leads, not fear. Where purpose drives, not pain. This is the time to walk like one who knows that heaven has Bar Edi made the way. The detached spirit is the unshakable spirit. And the unshakable spirit is the one through whom God can change the world. Something shifted after September 30. You can sense it in the rhythm of the days, in the weight of the atmosphere, in the quiet whisper of your own spirit. The world looks the same, yet something unseen has turned. The Spirit of God has moved the line between what was and what will be. You are standing in a divine transition, a moment when heaven is separating those who live by sight from those who walk by faith. It is not just a change in time, it is a shabar enji in dimension. And when God shifts the dimension, the first thing He changes is not the circumstance around you, but the condition within you. For years, you may have been asking God for breakthrough, for healing, for expansion. But what if the breakthrough begins not by gaining, but by letting GBRO? What if the next level of your destiny is hidden behind the things you refuse to release? The Lord is saying in this hour, detach from what no longer serves your purpose. Not because those things were evil, but because they have completed their assignment in your life. Every blessing has a Seber sun, and when that season ends, to hold on becomes bondage. God is calling you to step into the maturity of faith that trusts Him even when He subtracts, that praises Him even when He prunes. Emotional and spiritual detachment is not the absence of love, it is the refinement of love. It is loving play without losing yourself. It is caring without clinging. It is walking with others without depending on them for the oxygen of your soul. When your emotions are anchored in divine trust, you are no longer shaken by who leaves, what changes, or what fails. That is when your spirit begins to live ABR both circumstances. Detachment is the evidence of inner strength, the fruit of divine security. It means you have reached the place where your identity is no longer built on approval, outcomes, or possession, but on the unchanging presence of God. After September 30th, heaven has shifted the frequency of testing. The Lord is teaching His people how to walk in emotional independence, not to be isolated, but to be unbreakable. There is a quiet strength being born inside you right now. It does not shout, it does not strive, it simply knows. It knows that even when the door closes, there is purpose in the hallway. It knows that even when others misunderstand, truth will defend itself in time. Detachment is faith expressed as peace. It is trust in motion. It is the resting place of a soul that has learned that control belongs only to God. Some of you are feeling the pain of this detachment. You wonder why certain relationships feel distant, why familiar passions no longer stir your heart, why what once satisfied you now feels empty. It is not confusion, it is transformation. The Spirit is detoxing your emotions, cleansing your attachments, purifying your motives. You are being prepared for higher gear responsibility, and higher responsibility demands higher stability. God cannot place the weight of nations on a heart that still trembles when people withdraw their approval. He is teaching you to draw strength from Him alone. So do not resist what He is removing. The doors that close are not punishment, they are protection. The silence that surrounds you is not abandonment. It is the sacred space where revelation grows. You may feel lonely, but you are not alone. You are being hidden for refinement. The potter never leaves the clay while it is in his hands. He presses, he shapes, he stretches, but he never forsakes. This season of detachment is proof that He trusts you with growth. When God detaches you, it means He is about to elevate you. When He strips away the unnecessary, it is so that you may travel lighter into destiny. Every great spiritual awakening begins with letting go. Abraham had to leave his country. Moses had to leave the palace. Jesus had to leave the crowd. And you must leave the emotional patterns that bind you to fear, doubt, and control. You cannot soar while chained to the familiar. The hour we are living in is not for the faint of heart. God is raising Barji, a generation of stable spirits, people who can stand in storms and still say, "It is well." People who can lose and still worship. People who can walk away from applause and still walk in purpose. That kind of power comes only through detachment, when you no longer depend on anything outside of you to confirm what God has already spoken within you. After September 30th, everything changes. The Spirit is calling His people to maturity. You are being trained to walk by revelation, not reaction. The things that once moved you will no longer move you. The noise that once distracted you will no longer touch you. You will love deeply, serve faithfully, give generously, but remain anchored in peace. That is the mark of divine mastery. So, let this be the declaration of your new season. I am free from fear. I am free from need. I am free from emotional dependency. My trust is in God alone. For when you detach from what can be shaken, you attach to what is eternal. And once your spirit stands on that foundation, no season, no loss, no person, and no power on earth can move you. This is the transformation heaven has ordained after September 30th. Everything that is not built on divine trust. WBR, it'll crumble, but those who rest in God will rise above the storm. Be still, for what is being birthed through detachment is divine strength. You are entering a realm where your peace will speak louder than your words, and your calmness will carry the weight of heaven's authority. This is your awakening. This is your moment of release. Everything changes because you have. Something sacred happens when the soul stops struggling to hold on to what is fading. The moment you loosen your grip, heaven tightens its embrace. Many of you are entering a time when the things you once depended on no longer respond to you in the same way. The conversations that used to comfort now feel empty. The places that once felt like home now feel foreign. It is not that you have lost your way, it is that you have outgrown the space that once held you. After September 30th, a divine shift began. Heaven quietly rearranged the atmosphere around your life, and you are now standing in a new vibration of purpose. The detachment you feel is not an accident, it is a divine invitation to rise. When God begins to transition His people, He does not always announce it with noise or miracles. Often He withdraws the inert why from things that no longer serve your growth. What you call loss is often God's mercy in disguise. He removes your emotional dependencies, so your spirit can learn to depend on Him completely. This is the essence of spiritual detachment. It is not rejection, it is redirection. It is not abandonment, it is advancement. God will never take something from you unless He plans to replace it with something eternal. In this season, the Spirit is teaching His people to master the art of calm, to stop wrestling with what they cannot control, to trust what they cannot see. Detachment is the power to remember in unshaken when everything around you changes. It is the quiet strength that says, I do not need to understand to obey. I do not need to see the outcome to trust the one who holds it. That kind of faith does not live in noise, it lives in stillness. The detached soul does not panic when doors close, because it knows that what is ordained cannot be denied. There is a spiritual law working in your favor right now, the law of release. When you let go of something that no longer aligns with your destiny, you make room for something that carries divine weight. Holding on to the past is like clutching ashes when God wants to hand you fire. Every attachment to what has ended drains your strength for what is beginning. The Spirit of God is saying, stop clinging to expired seasons. There is nothing in yesterday that can sustain the glory of today. When you stop rehearsing the old, heaven can release the new. Some of you are fighting what was meant to free you. You pray for peace, but resist the pruning that produces it. You ask for purpose, but cling to people who no longer fit your purpose. You cry for direction, but ignore the silence where God speaks. The Lord allows emotional detachment, to break your dependence on what was never meant to define you. When your emotions are purified by surrender, your discernment sharpens, and you begin to see life through heaven's perspective. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start declaring, this is happening for me. Do not be afraid of the loneliness that comes with detachment. Every great transformation requires solitude. When God is preparing you for greater authority, He separates you from the noise of the crowd. It is in the hidden place that your roots deepen. It is in the quiet that your power matures. Do not mistake isolation for punishment. It is divine incubation. The seed must be buried before it blooms. You may feel unseen, but heaven is watching. The world cannot see what God is doing in the dark, but when the light shines again, you will not be the same. After September 30, the spiritual atmosphere over your life began to demand authenticity. God is calling you to a higher frequency of faith, where fear no longer dictates your decisions and emotions no longer lead your spirit. Detachment is the purification of purpose. It is the process of removing every emotional chain that keeps you tied to temporary. The more you release, the lighter you become. The lighter you become, the higher you rise. This is how God prepares vessels for glory, by freeing them from what once satisfied the flesh but starved the spirit. Look back and see how far He has already brought you. There were moments you thought you would not survive, but here you are stronger, clearer, and closer to divine peace than ever before. That strength was born in the moments you let go. Every tear that fell was not wasted, it watered the roots of your faith. Every disappointment was a divine appointment to push you closer to surrender. And now, your soul is learning the sacred rhythm of trust. There will come a day when you will thank God for everything that left, for everything that changed, for every door that closed, because it all led you to Him. The detachment you once feared became the freedom you needed. You and me no longer need to chase what is meant to find you. You no longer beg for validation that was never meant to sustain you. You have found peace in divine order. After September 30th, everything changed, not because the world shifted, but because your awareness did. You are awakening to the truth that real power is not in controlling life, but in yielding to the one who orchestrates it. You are learning that true faith does not demand proof, it rests in promise. And when your spirit reaches that place of quiet assurance, heaven moves mountains on your behalf. Be still, beloved. You are being detached to be redefined. You are being refined to be reassigned. Let go of what pulls you down and rise with what calls you higher. The old season is closing. The new one has already begun. Detachment is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your dominion. There comes a moment in every believer when God begins to pull them away from everything familiar. The places that once felt comfortable begin to feel too small. The people who once understood you no longer speak your language. The dreams that once excited you now feel incomplete. You are not broken. You are being expanded. After September 30, the Spirit began to separate many from the illusions of security they once built their identity upon. Heaven is calling for deeper faith, stronger trust, and unshakable peace. You are being invited into a realm where your confidence no longer depends on what you can control, but on what you can surrender. You may not realize it, but everything that is being taken away is a divine act of mercy. There is a hidden love in every loss, a quiet grace in every detachment. God will never remove something from your life unless He is replacing it with something more eternal. Sometimes His blessings arrive disguised as endings. Sometimes His gifts are wrapped in grief. But the divine always moves with purpose. You must learn to look beyond what your eyes can see and listen to what your spirit already knows. Detachment is not about rejecting the world. It is about refusing to be ruled by it. When you are emotionally tied to outcomes, you become a prisoner of your expectations. When you learn to release those expectations into the hands of God, your soul becomes free. Freedom is not the absence of struggle. It is the mastery of peace in the midst of it. Detachment does not mean you STBROP caring. It means you care without collapsing. It means your love is no longer rooted in need, but in strength. This is what the Spirit of God is teaching in this season. To hold lightly what He gives, and to release quickly what He takes. Because whatever belongs to you in heaven will always find its way to you on earth. The truly powerful are those who can say, even if it all changes, I remain at rest. That is divine maturity, to live from a place where your emotions no longer dictate your obedience. When you reach that level of trust, life can no longer manipulate you. Many are feeling TBR, weight of this transition. You are asking, why do I feel empty? Why does everything around me seem unstable? It is because God is removing the scaffolding you once leaned on. He is forcing your faith to stand on its own foundation. You are being reintroduced to the raw simplicity of trust. You cannot walk in new authority while clinging to old dependencies. The detachment you feel is not loss, it is liberation. It is the Spirit saying, you are ready to stand on what you once only believed. After September 30th, there was a shift in the spirit realm. The Lord began separating emotional noble eyes from spiritual truth. Those who walk by emotion will feel confused in this season, but those who walk by revelation will find peace that makes no sense to the natural mind. The shaking that you see in your relationships, finances, and surroundings is not meant to destroy it, is meant to define. GBROD is revealing what is real and exposing what was only temporary. He is teaching you to discern the eternal amid the temporary. So many try to hold on to what is dying because they fear the silence that follows release. But silence is sacred. It is where God speaks most clearly. It is where your sober all learns to breathe again. Do not rush to fill the silence with noise. Let it work on you. Let it wash away every trace of anxiety and need. The deeper the stillness, the clearer your purpose becomes. The detached heart is the one God trusts most, for it is no longer moved by praise or rejection, success or failure. It moves only at His word. If you are feeling unseen right now, understand this. God hides you before He highlights you. Every divine promotion begins with a period of pruning. You are being stripped of the need for recognition so that you can carry true authority. When you are debt-ached from outcomes, your obedience becomes pure. You no longer serve for reward, you serve because of love. And that kind of love carries heavenly power. You will notice that your spirit reacts differently now. The things that used to offend you no longer matter. The opinions that once wounded you now pass through you without harm. You are no longer emotionally entangled in the temporary. That is not apathy, that is strength. That is the fruit of detachment. It means the storm can rage around you, but peace remains within you. After September 30, everything changed because heaven demanded it. The old ways of living cannot carry the new dimension of grace being released. This is a season of purification, of refining fire. Everything that is not anchored in divine trust will be shaken, but those who have learned to detach will stand unmovable. You are being positioned for spiritual authority, not through striving, but through surrender. So do not resist the process. The pruning is painful, but the fruit will be glorious. What you release in tears today will return multiplied in peace tomorrow. Let go of the outcome and hold on to the presence of God. Detachment is not the end. It is the unveiling of your true strength. This is your time to walk in stillness, to move in purpose, to speak from peace. The old has passed, the new has begun. After September 30th, everything truly changes because heaven has shifted the atmosphere and your soul has finally learned to let go. There is a new sound rising in the spirit, a sound that is not born from noise, but from stillness. It is the sound of those who have been refined through detachment, purified through surrender, and strengthened through loss. After September 30th, the Spirit began a deep and silent work in the hearts of many. It was not a public revival, but an inward awakening. Heaven began to separate the voices of emotion from the whispers of revelation. Those who listened carefully began to understand that God was no longer calling his people to strive, but to surrender. For in surrender, there is strength, and in detachment, there is divine dominion. The greatest battles are not fought in the world around us, but in the inner rooms of the soul. God has been confronting every false anchor, every dependence on people, approval, comfort, and control. He is asking his children to trust him without proof, to obey him without explanation, and to rest even when the outcome is unseen. The old ways of walking in faith through emotion are passing away. A new dimension of spiritual maturity is being birthed, one that lives in peace amid uncertainty, one that thrives in silence, one that knows the presence of God is inobar. You see, detachment is not an act of rejection, it is an act of reverence. It is saying, Lord, I trust you more than my understanding. When you reach that point, your spirit becomes untouchable. The world can change around you, but your peace will remain. People can misunderstand you, but our confidence will not shake. The detached heart no longer needs to chase what is leaving or hold on to what is fading. It simply walks with God, knowing that everything that belongs to you will align in its appointed time. After September 30th, the Lord began to expose emotional idols, the things people secretly worship in place of him. For some, it was control. For others, it was the desire to be needed or loved. But when God loves you deeply, he dismantles every false god that keeps you from being whole. He allows disappointment to reveal dependency. He allows silence to expose your need for validation. He allows endings to teach you endurance. Every test is tailored to refine your trust. And when the refining is complete, your faith will no longer be fragile, it will be unshakable. Many are asking, why did everything change so suddenly? Because heaven is accelerating the growth of those who will carry divine assignments in the coming season. You cannot fulfill your purpose while entangled in emotional instability. God is preparing his vessels to lead, to heal, to build, and to speak with authority that flows from inner stillness. Emotional detachment is not a loss of feeling it. IBRS, the elevation of awareness. It is the realization that peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of divine order within. You may be walking through a season where God feels distant, but distance is an illusion. He is closer than ever. He is teaching you to sense him, not in emotion, but in essence. He is teaching you to recognize his voice, not by volume, but by vibration. The detached heart hears God not through the noise of need, but through the quiet of knowing. That is the kind of intimacy he desires, a relationship not built on desperation, but on devotion. Do not fear the emptiness that follows letting go. The emptiness is sacred space. It is where revelation will grow. You are not being emptied to be left alone. You are being emptied to be filled with power. God never subtracts without multiplying in return. Every detachment is a doorway. Every release is an invitation. And when you walk through it in faith, you will find that what you thought was ending was actually evolving. After September 30th, there has been a divine recalibration of time and purpose. The Spirit is calling his people into alignment with the rhythm of heaven. The frantic, anxious energy of the old season will not carry into the new. This is a time of still authority, a time when peace will be your weapon and calmness your crown. The greatest victories ahead will not come through striving, but through standing. Those who remain still in spirit will move mountains with their words. Those who remain calm under pressure will command divine outcomes without resistance. You are being trained to reign, not react. The world around you will grow louder, but your spirit must grow quieter. The storms will come, but your peace will not break. The higher God takes you, the less noise He allows around you. That is why He is detaching you from distractions, so that you may discern His whisper. This is your season to walk in divine authority through stillness, to rule in peace, to lead from calmness. Everything changes after detachment, because detachment is the doorway to dominion. When you no longer fear losing anything, you gain everything. You become untouchable, unstoppable, unshakable. Heaven can trust you with power because you are no longer controlled by emotion. You will carry influence not through force, but through presence. You will heal not through striving, but through stillness. You will speak, and hearts will shift not because of your words, but because of the peace that backs them. After September 30th, the earth is under divine transformation. Those who have learned to detach will rise as anchors of peace in a restless world. Their presence will carry light. Their deeds will carry weight, and their silence will carry wisdom. This is your calling, to live free from fear, to walk unbound, to trust beyond reason. Detachment is not the end of love, it is the beginning of power. When you finally let go, heaven finally takes over. And in that sacred surrender, truly everything changes. When all is said and done, the message of this divine moment is clear. Everything that has been shaken was meant to be shaken, so that only what is unshakable remains. After September 30th, heaven has drawn a line between the temporary and the eternal, between emotion and revelation, between fear and faith. God has been calling His people into a higher place, a place where peace is not a reaction, but a position, where detachment is not coldness, but confidence, where surrender is not weakness, but power. You were never meant to live chained to the weight of what changes. You were meant to walk in the freedom of what cannot. Detachment is the refining of your faith, the quiet transformation of your soul. When you release what you cannot control, you step into what God has already ordained. You begin to live from heaven's rhythm, unmoved, unbothered, unbound. His is He hour to rise above emotion and walk in revelation. Let go of the need to understand and embrace the peace that surpasses understanding. Let go of what left and trust that what remains is divine. The season of striving is over, the season of stillness has begun. For those who choose to trust, to detach, and to rest in God's perfect timing, everything will align. The shaking was never to destroy you, it was to reveal you. You are being called into maturity, into mastery, into a peace that no storm can touch. And when you reach that sacred place of surrender, when your heart says, Lord, I trust you no matter what, heaven opens and everything changes. So stand still, breathe deeply, and know this: what God began after September 30 was not the end of an era, it was the birth of a new one. A season where detachment births dominion, where faith replaces fear, and where peace becomes your power. This is your divine turning point. Everything that matters will remain, and everything that remains will carry the breath of heaven. For truly, when you let go, God takes over, and from that moment on, everything changes forever.